Go ahead.
Oops, I lost you. Alaikum, Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Najeeb Ranginwala. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'd like to recite Durood Sharif. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad wa sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Thank you very much for inviting me, and today I'm going to present about intelligence and feeling. Basically, I'm trying to integrate psychiatry and Islam into this whole concept of intelligence and feeling, which we know about it. So I will be going into the neuropsychiatry and neuropsychology about that, and then combine it together with Islam, so we have a better understanding what the Islam says and how we can imply in our life as well as in our religion what 14 years ago, 100 years ago, the Islam used to tell us. It's pretty much the same concept. We never look in that way, and my way of trying to express you to make you understand that the religion, our religion pretty much tells everything, and now neuroscience is discovering the facts about it. So that's the basic reason of presenting today, and to acknowledge, so you be aware of it. Now, sorry. Somehow my screen has freezed.
Press enter.
Oh, perfect. So let me give you the basic understanding about, so intelligence is the ability to process information in adapted sequence. That's the basic definition of intelligence. So a lot of things has been done in the last 200 years about intelligence, because that's where people were interested in it, where the progress is. So let me give you the brief history behind intelligence in the last 200 years and going from it. So Alfred Bennett, the French psychologist, suggested about IQ in the early 1900s. So this was the first time it was completely published, and going from there, it's considered intelligence in the form of IQ. Then it was later on, means in 1970s and 60s, people were trying to know their IQs, how intelligent they are, and that was the level of understanding from intelligence was. And it was pretty much later on revised at Stanford University in mid 1920, and it was called the Stanford Bennett test. Basically, because initially when Alfred it was in a French version of it, and then when the Stanford University put the American version into that, so it was a combined both, so it can be applied over here in America. So that's why it was used to be called Stanford Bennett test, which on this, basically a verbal skill test was used to assess anybody's performance. Since it was used in only verbal skill, later on Wushler's skill came in, and which incorporated non-verbal skill like math into it. So now you have verbal skill and math was assessed together to know the intelligence of a person, and that was being used. But in these tests, what they give you is it actually predicts the success in school, nothing more than that. So school uses IQ and all those things very much as a success at school. Nothing more can be judged from that. That was the finding coming out at that time. So it was pretty used in the school level. Afterwards, they realized there's something more can be done, because they want to see how I can understand intelligence and apply in a common person's life. So Charles Perman suggested human intelligence is from the source, which they call it journal factor of intelligence, or G. He was the one who suggested that. because he wants to predict the academic performance with the future job performance. That was able from this journal factor of intelligence was used. Unfortunately, it does not cover all the aspect of intelligence which a human experience. But this was better than what IQ was. So Charles Perman, which is called journal factor. And as this was going on, and then in 1990, Howard Gardner, he's a great psychologist from Harvard Medical School. He suggested like 8 or 9 different type of intelligence, like emotional intelligence, social intelligence, verbal intelligence. So he gave different categories of intelligence. In psychiatry, initially accepted that because psychiatry and psychology was very much together. But as the time progresses after 1990, psychiatry moved away from that 8 different type of intelligence. It acknowledges it, but it does not follows all the way. But the psychology follows with all the way. And the reason behind that is basically in 1990 onward or 1980 onwards, science improved significantly, especially the neuroimaging improved significantly. You have structural MRI, you have functional MRI. Structural MRI is CT MRI, and functional MRI is PET scan. You have fMRIs, you have your SPECT scan, diffuse tensor imaging, and all those things. So what they were able in internal medicine or neuroimaging is that they were able to locate where it was and a connection between that. So that was significant. Now they can see a person doing the task while they are being imaged. So psychiatry moved away from psychology and was together with neuroscience and all those things. So that's how they differentiate away from psychology. Psychologists still believe in it, but psychiatry goes with internal medicine and saying that we have more area to discover and there's more connection. So that's why, they agree on those 8 intelligence, but not all the way. The neuroscience of in psychiatry and neurology does not acknowledge all the way. So later on, Cattell and Horner suggested there are 2 different type of journal factor. One is crystallized intelligence and other is fluid intelligence. These are the new concept which develop, and these are the concept from there onwards up till now. It is that there are 2 type of basic intelligences, which one is crystallized intelligence and other is fluid intelligence. Let me tell, and these are the basic concept where we are still following that. So what's crystalline intelligence is basically it's a long-term memory, and it improves with age. So it's like the more data comes to you, it's in a crystallized form. It's in a hippocampal area, basically located at the area of CA2 and 3. Now that's the more area where it's and dentate gyrus and all those things. So this is where most of the crystalline intelligence or the memory storage is in the hippocampal area. So that's one. And the fluid intelligence is more rely on inductive reasoning. What means that inductive reasoning is like E equal MC squared. So you're using the formula to apply on something. That's called inductive reasoning or abstract. The other is they use the abstract reasoning or pattern pairing. But it try to solve problem experience. So that is a factor in fluid intelligence that does not need experience. It solves the problem without experience. It's on the DAC, a working memory. So it's also a short-term memory. So fluid intelligence is all over in the brain as compared to a crystallized intelligence, which is located more in the hippocampal and some other areas. But fluid intelligence spreads out pretty much, so separate. So these are the 2 concepts in psychiatry and psychiatry pretty much. About intelligence, that there are 2 different types, crystalloid and fluid intelligence. The other thing which with intelligence comes is the memory, how we store memories, encoding, storing, retrieval, and then the 4th process, which they also acknowledge, is forgetting. I'm not going to go into detail about memory because that's another topic. Related to intelligence is your frontal lobe and where of the brain, where executive functioning take place, where your judgment take place. So that has to be kept in mind, that with intelligence, you have to make judgment and all those things, and that is in your frontal lobe. So let me explain to you from the brain point of view, and then we'll go to Islam and we'll go from here. So this is your front part of the brain. This is the back part of the brain. This is your hippocampal area where your memory is stored, and then it goes. This is the fornix, and this is a mammillary body, which is part of the memory. The other thing is this is the amygdala, and then you have the limbic system over here, which is the thalamus in the middle and the caudate nucleus on the side. That's all is a limbic area. This is the prefrontal cortex and frontal lobe, and so just to acknowledge that these are very much connected, and they're where the intelligence and thinking take place. So these are from the anatomical area of the brain. I'm just trying to explain. This is another figure illustrating that this is the amygdala, this is the hippocampus where the memory is stored, and in the middle is actually the thalamus, you can see, and the caudate nucleus on the side. This is prefrontal cortex, frontal lobe, which are all the limbic area connected to here. This is hypothalamus over here, which is a significantly important area of the brain to go from there. So where do I come? There's another one, but that's more complicated. So let me put all this information to Islam and explain to you why it's so important. So if you read Quran, you will, like in Surah Baqarah, verses 62, you can read Surah Luqman, Quran, and other places, you will hear or read about hikmat or akal. That's usually, and a lot of other words, terminology used over here, which is very similar to intelligence, but not exactly. And let me bring what's the concept. And there's a core concept you need to understand. Anybody who has hikmat will have intelligence, but anybody who has intelligence does not need hikmat. And that's very important to know that for hikmat, you need intelligence, but intelligence does not need hikmat. Point of saying is that intelligence can be used in a bad way, like shaitan uses it. The hikmat or wisdom is used by pious people in a right direction. So that is what Quran is mentioning about it, that with intelligence, you need hikmat. And this is what is a blessing given by Allah to people to have this, and you have to strive it to get this wisdom. And then when you have the wisdom, it's located over here. Your executive function, which is done over here, which we see in neuroimaging, is done over here, where the wisdom comes. And to apply that, basically, if you look at, in your namaz, when you do sijda, this is the area which you put in on the ground. The crown jewel of your thinking you put on the ground to show show that you don't know much about it, and you're giving everything to Allah to make begging that accepting the fact that Allah knows everything, and you don't know nothing. You're starting from here. This is where God likes your act, that your wisdom lies over here and you're putting on the ground. Same thing in dua. When you're doing dua by sijda, Allah loves that act of what you're doing, is because basically you're bringing the wisdom portion of your brain to the ground to beg Allah to give some wisdom and guidance. So that is where the fact why Allah loves this act, because you're putting your wisdom, which is here, locating from the neuroanatomy in this actual life of yours. So that you should keep in mind that what your wisdom comes is coming from this area. It's all connected to your hypothalamus and all those things. And let me explain with the next slide how they are connected pretty much, because before you get all your thinking and memory, they are all interconnected to each other. So I will explain that portion too with the hadith, which is also explaining that. So before I go through that, I will tell you this another slide about in psychiatry and psychology is the emotion and feeling. You need to understand this concept. So emotion is an autonomic, unconscious behavioral and cognitive response to brain stimulation. It's very unconscious, but the feeling is the conscious expression of emotion. This is what it is, that emotion is inside of you. It's unconscious, it's a cognitive behavior phenomena with the brain stimulation, but the feeling is the expression of it. And being aware of your emotion is the feeling. So that's one thing. So let me explain how it's connected to your brain, and we'll go from here. So basically, when you got emotionally competent stimulus like vision, hearing, see, or other ways where you get that, it first of all comes, and it always, some of the portion will go to thalamus. This is the area of the thalamus where it goes. It's a sensory relay section of your brain. Pretty much everything goes over here, except olfactory, which goes directly, but it does do come to thalamus, but it has more direct connection. So if first it comes to the thalamus, which is the relay station, and from the thalamus, it actually goes to, from the thalamus, it goes, when it's very emotionally competent, it goes to amygdala. So this is the, it sends two pathways. One is sends to amygdala, and the another one goes to the prefrontal cortex, or which is forebrain of the brain system. The first one, which is called the fast pathway, and the second one is called the slow pathway. What happens is that from the thalamus, when it goes to the amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain, the amygdala lit up, and get excited with this emotional component or emotionally content of the thinking or vision or hearing, whichever comes, and it send it to the hypothalamus. When you send to the hypothalamus, I'm going to explain here what hypothalamus is. Yes, this is a slide I mentioned to you previously. So hypothalamus is a very it's a center that controls a lot of things of your human body. Your autonomic nervous system, which is sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, your endocrine, the cortisol, and the norepinephrine and all those things does control. And flight and fright reaction take place over here. Your skeletal muscle also originate. It's a driving box of your human, So autonomic nervous system sends all the signals from here to all over the brain and all over your body. So as soon as hypothalamus get excited from that, it sends signals to everywhere, to the nervous system, the endocrine system, the circadian rhythm, the sleep, the cognition. It sends all over. It's just like it's a driver's seat which runs the car pretty much of your human body. So like when you have something really bad, you start sweating, your heart rate goes up, which is how flight and fright reaction, the endocrine kicks in, the cortisol goes up and all those things. The skeletal muscle kicks in, contraction, going backward, forward, what your reaction should be, your thinking, your mood, your feeling, everything kicks in with this autonomic nervous system. So it's a very driving factor over here. So as I mentioned over here, when it's this autonomic nervous system from the hypothalamus gets stimulated, you have a reaction coming in, okay, which is the first reaction of a human body when they see something. This is from the first stimulus. The second stimulus, which I mentioned from the thalamus, which goes to prefrontal cortex or area, or that one analyze the information. Okay. Once it analyzes the information, what it happened, it sends back to the amygdala and says, hey, calm down. This is not exactly, let's rethink about it. This is not, it should be the way you are taking just a knee-jerk response. It should be tamed down. Okay, so he tried to tame down the amygdala for his response back. And once they start taming down, the amygdala again sends to the hypothalamus and go back to what should be done. So the second response from here takes longer time. It takes 5, 10, 20 seconds before it kicks in, depends on the stimulus. And then it goes back to amygdala, and from amygdala to the hypothalamus, and hypothalamus, and it's all over your body. So your response changes after a while. So that is the circuit you need to know that happens in your brain every day of life. Why so important? That's what I like to bring up. There's a hadith you may heard. It's that if you're angry, extremely angry or angry, you need to sit down. And then if you still angry, lie down. And so this is exactly the explanation neuroscience is explaining, that we have this circuit over here, which is the fast pathway and the slow pathway. And it's telling you your response, that it will take longer time to calm down. Why? Because your prefrontal cortex kicks in, the wisdom area kicks in, and then it calms the amygdala to calm down, and the response changes. So now you can appreciate the hadith, which was 1400 years ago. Huzur told us that when you get angry, upset, just sit and down at that time and see if you calm down. If not, lie down. And this is what the neuroscience is explaining nowadays, that this is a pathway of the brain that works. In a lot of other areas, it works the same way, that you have two circuits, especially with emotion and feeling is concerned. This two pathway works. So keep in mind. And when I read this, when I was in my training and read about it, and this hadith came, and I knew this hadith long time ago, and it really clicked in my mind that what was 1400 years ago was so much we knew about it, but we didn't know the system, how the brain works. But now we appreciate Islam, which came 1400 years ago, actually tells you what's running, but it does not tell you how it works. But the neuroscience is actually explaining us how your brain works, and Huzur Sallam told us how it works. So I just want you to understand this concept, that what we learn from Quran and Sahih Hadith is so important, that neuroscience is validating nowadays with all these features of what's going into your brain. That's the main concept, and I just want to emphasize with this hadith and with the intelligence and with the memory system, for you to aware of it, that this is the neuroscience establishing what we know about the hadith based on the neuroscience. If anybody has any question regarding that, I'm ready to answer that right now.
Thank you, Brother Najeeb, for this wonderful presentation. The floor is open for questions, so please come with your questions. The one thing that I wanted to ask Brother Najeeb myself is, we also learned that istighfar is important, like when you're angry, that you do istighfar, and you also say like "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim." What's the impact on the brain, whether we say it like within ourselves or we say it with the sound?
So when you're doing istighfar, is somebody else wants to join in? So istighfar, let me istighfar is what we are saying that we did a mistake and we want to get out of it. It means we are accepting the mistake. That's correct. That's what I feel is the meaning, correct?
Yes, or like for example, if you and I got into an argument, right, and you made me upset, then I say Astaghfirullah al-Azim, A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajim. I start saying certain words so that doesn't increase my anger level. You know what I mean? And I avoid like a further escalating the argument, or vice versa. You do the same, or you see what I'm saying?
Correct.
Or if I've seen something, for example, not pleasant on TV, for example, the bombing of innocent
Yeah.
people, and then I say, Astaghfirullah, A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir-" you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
say those words, what I mean, to calm down myself, for example.
Exactly. So what happened, this is what I feel it is your prefrontal cortex kicking in, because basically there's something wrong here and it's pre-programmed right now. The intelligence with the wisdom is already pre-planned here. So when it comes, it really respond back that there's something wrong here. So let's go back and say sorry and move out of it, because your brain is already set up for this system. So they come back and you are charged in for the system that, hey, I should not be doing that, or I did mistake right now. You acknowledge right away and you just want to get out of it and apologize to other person. So it's a pretty much prefrontal cortex stimulation sitting over here from the wisdom wise, because the people who have hikmah and all those things realize that you will never be 100% right. You can have some issues. So let's be pious enough and look into it rather than jump into it, and calm down and roll. So it's the prefrontal cortex kicks in to correct you that before you get emotionally charged and go from it. So I feel it's a prefrontal cortex issue. Hopefully I answer your question.
Yes. So it's more of it helps me control my anger and emotions, right? So you're saying the prefrontal cortex is taking over to control the
Correct.
and reflexes amongst, what I mean, my whole system. Is that what?
Yes. So the wisdom lies over here, and this is where the striving, and that's not intelligence. Intelligence is a part of the wisdom, as I explained. For hikmat or wisdom, you need intelligence, but intelligence does not need hikmat. The shaitan has intelligence, correct? And use in a bad way, correctly. But hikmat does not use everything, or good judgment use in a bad way. So you can have a deed, but good deed or bad deed. So wisdom is a good deed. So just keep in mind. So that's my understanding about it.
So the hikmah is a higher level function than intelligence?
Yes, definitely. Intelligence you need, just like you need memory to run the system. You need intelligence to to know the system. But there is higher ground to figure out, even if you have intelligence, it could be a bad intelligence. It could be a good intelligence. The wisdom, the hikmah, tells you this is a good intelligence. It means you should follow that. The bad intelligence is the example of shayateen. They use intelligence in a bad way to push you away from the right pathway. Means Abu Jahl, high brightest person, Huzur Sallallahu met Huzur Sallallahu, get the guidance. He used to dress up with a dari and all those things. He living in that environment. He had intelligence, but where was his wisdom? Wisdom was gone. Allah gives you wisdom. Correct? It's a blessing, but you have to strive for it. You have to strive for it to get the wisdom. Not everybody will get. How did Luqman Hakim got wisdom? It's mentioned in Surah Luqman. It means, so wisdom is something Allah gives to you as a blessing, but you have to strive for it. Not everybody will walk in and get the wisdom. And wisdom is located over here. That's what I'm trying to explain. But everybody has a little bit of wisdom, but if you strive in Quran and the way it is, Allah will give you more wisdom and you will correct yourself, auto-correct yourself. That this is wrong, let's go, calm down, you know. So that's what it is.
Wonderful. Great explanation. Yeah. Brothers and sisters, if you have other questions for...
No, this is really a wonderful presentation. This is wonderful. I don't have a question, but I learned a lot. Thank you.
Anybody else? Because I have another question, but I want other people to
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me. Najeeb, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Rehan, go ahead.
Okay, I'm in the car right now, so I will not be available to comment after your answer. But it's more not a direct question, but more, you know, we talk about the qalb, the heart, and you know, people who have a compassionate heart. And there is a certain concept in Islam and in all other religions regarding the role of the heart, the qalb. How do you in psychiatry see this when, as it relates to intelligence and hikmah? Because we know that, you know, outside of science, we have this concept of the heart being involved with human emotion. So how would you translate it in terms of the brain? And I'll just put myself on mute in here because I'm driving.
Yeah, sure. It's a very good concept. So, you know, I explained in the past also that because in psychiatry, what we in the Quran, it's usually mentioned nafs, qalb, and ruh. This is the combination you have, pretty much nafs, qalb, and ruh, the connection between each of them. And then in psychiatry, we have id, ego, and superego. You know, the nafs is id, the ego is qalb, and superego is ruh. And that's the combination in psychiatry is, which I think so I explained in the previous presentation, that the qalb is basically your ego portion. In my previous presentation, I explained in detail. It's a very long, like half an hour presentation of how they are connected, where I told what the Freudian system is and how he thought about it. And so it's pretty much, that's the thing of the connection between id, ego, and superego. It's basically it's your ego, which is the qalb. Some people take it literally, the meaning, but if you listen to Dr. Israr Ahmed, I got a chance to meet him. So he explained, because he is also a physician, Dr. Israr Ahmed. So he explained the id, ego, and superego concept with nafs, qalb, and ruh, also, and relating to that. So the qalb is the ego portion in psychiatry we consider. Does it explain your answer, your question?
Jazakallah. No, that does make sense. So, you know, like I said, because I'm driving, I won't be able to comment too much. But no, thank you so much for that answer. That does clarify what I was asking. So yeah, it does make a lot of sense. Thank you so much.
And Rehan, one more thing. I can send you that video where I explain the id, ego, and superego, the whole clarification, how the Freudian system is and what they were thinking, and then how the Islam is and what nafs, qalb, and ruh is, which I correlate both together to explain that the Freudian system pretty much is accepting what Quran is saying. We have figured out what they think. So that will help you, because it's a very long answer, not a short answer to explain that.
Sure. Thank you so much. Jazakallah. Excellent presentation. Excellent presentation, Mujib. Thank you.
You're most welcome, sir. Does anybody has any questions? So I'm happy to answer.
This is Tariq. Just joined in a little late, but mashallah, Very, very nice presentation. May Allah bless you for that.
Ameen, Tariq.
Alaikum assalam.
Walaikum salam.
Brother Najeeb, since I waited and nobody's asking questions, I have another chance for 10 more questions. Just one.
Go ahead.
I think we discussed this shortly, actually, in our tafsir in Ramadan when we had Surah Al-Alaq, when we
Yes.
looked at ayat 15 and 16, and even you have a chance if you want to pull them up. But it talks about the area, the frontal area of the brain, pretty much that talks about it, that and it's talking about Abu Jahl, that if he does not stop, that Allah will have him pulled from the frontal area of his head.
Right. That's another one. That's true.
Yes, and then it explains two things, nasiyatin kadhibatan khati'ah, right? It tells you that it's a lying area, and also the area that controls the decisions of making wrong, like that he chose to make wrong or to sin or to do harm. So if you can explain to us, and if those decisions or the decision making process really happens in that area, like especially if it's intentional, sometimes we make mistakes. And
Okay.
from the tafsir is that it talks specifically about intentionally doing, not making a mistake, really. It's choosing to make a mistake, to be more specific, like the way the wording in Arabic was, like Allah used in the Quran. So if you can explain more to us.
You raise a very nice question. And so let me explain. So that's where the difference of intelligence and wisdom comes, And so intelligence really tells you the detail how things are done, but it tells you, goes really further in detail. This is the way to go. This is how. But then your subconscious mind start controlling you. Hey, subconscious is greedy. Some subconscious wants to get money. Some subconscious wants to enjoy life, things like that. So it's pretty much closes your wisdom area. It influences so much. The subconscious start controlling the wisdom area so much, so you don't go into the area where you need to understand that this is not the right pathway. So the hikmah tells you the right pathway. The intelligence just tells you that, hey, you do this, you use a better computer, it will be faster. If you go a slower computer, you'll be use an old computer, will be slow, things like that. So it gives you all the ideas and all those things. But then the subconscious mind kicks in and tells you, hey, it's an easy way out. You do this way. You ask somebody else to help you and you pass the exam. So why to work hard, and cloud your thinking. And so it influences so strongly here that they cannot they go on a wrong direction. So Allah mentioned in Quran a lot of time that we pretty much encapsulated the qalb, which is another way of saying that we contain them. So now their prefrontal cortex, which is the wisdom area or hikmat area, is gone. They are not there. Like shaitan will not have wisdom. Shaitan will not have hikmat because he has intelligence but does not have wisdom to understand this concept. It will make you do all the wrong things using the clever techniques to fool you the system. So it clouds your thinking here. And so intelligence get like pretty much bogged down, and your hand get bogged down in thinking process because it does not, it clouds you. And then these people find ways out to get things done to their desire. And that's what it is. And so that is a blessing which Allah provides you when you are pious enough and striving for it, like Luqman Hakim, he was striving for it, and then that's why in Quran it's mentioned that he's one of the wisest person on earth, and the whole Surah Luqman is there, and the advice he gave to the kids, which we should. That's my recommendation to all of us, that we should talk to the advices which was mentioned in the Quran to their kid. Personally talk to our kids and explain what. So that Luqman thought about it, use the wisdom, and Allah appreciate his wisdom. And that's why it's mentioned in Quran. How many? It's the biggest opportunity. I mean, you can get that Allah mentioned you in the Quran for your wisdom. That's just phenomenal. So that is where the concept, I feel that wisdom, it controls it, but since your subconscious mind clouds it, your wisdom does not catch it, or you don't have wisdom, you have just intelligence kicking in to do the best out of it. So your wisdom is pretty much clouded, or it does not exist. So Allah has sealed their wisdom pretty much. Does it answer your question?
Yes. Now, is there like, for example, I can make a decision, right, and I can rely on my wisdom, but I could still make the wrong decision, right? That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm doing the right decision. It makes I use my best judgment to arrive to that, right?
Correct. So we have wisdom to a drop in an ocean. You know, Allah has that much wisdom, and Allah will give you more wisdom. You know, so you can do wrong, imperfect decisions because your wisdom is just Pentium 1, not Pentium higher level. Correct. So you will do mistakes and things like that, but you will be better off than previous things. So wisdom is there. Wisdom has a higher level. Depends on how much wisdom Allah has given it to you, and you will do the best, you know. But the goal is to go into strive to get wisdom as much as possible, to be pious enough, look and read Quran with the context and try to understand the Quran from the context. So Allah open up the wisdom pathway for you. Once the wisdom pathway opens up, you look life differently with the wisdom concept. You know, at the end of your life, as Luqman Hakim said too, said to his son as advice, these are the advice I give you. So his wisdom takes it. And that is very important for all of us to understand that.
Brother Najib, probably this opens the request from my end is to go through those ayat and talking about them from a psychiatry standpoint, because you know the Quran has a lot of wisdom in it, and it's everywhere. Allah's given us advice. This is an area specifically Luqman is talking to his son, which is very related to, you know, the subject that we've been talking about for a whole year. But if you can find, you know, the psychiatric connection to all of these and making a person a better human being, that would be great. So
Yeah, that's a great idea. And please send me also, I can review that. Also read it, but you know, you and me can go through those ayat. So at least I'm being prepared better way, because I may have very less wisdom on this part, but I can do my best, you know, and go from there. What's my understanding about psychiatry with this portion, you know, because then I'm well prepared to answer those, but I'm happy to go into that detail.
that's great. Yes, we will do that, inshallah. Brother Rayan, I think you unmuted yourself so you can speak.
Yes, thank you for noting that. Najeeb, so I'm not quite sure whether you would include the ability to differentiate innately good from bad, uh, you, uh, we have this concept of the innate ability of human beings that was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to recognize good from bad, فَأَلْهَمْهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. So that concept, how do you look at it from the psychiatric point of view? You may have discussed this before, so if you have, I apologize. But is this something that is recognized within the scientific realm, that humans have this, or is this something acquired from your point of view, from the
Very nice,
science of it?
very nice question. So orbitofrontal cortex, when we do addictions and all those things, in fMRI, it opens up when you're falsifying the data in the fMRI and diffuser tensing imaging. You can see that area in the orbitofrontal cortex on the there. One is on the right side, one is the left side. So the falsifying data in the prefrontal cortex kicks in, and it tells you when you're doing fMRI that that kicks in. And we see in addiction, where in addiction behavior, there's a lot of falsification lying take place and all those things. So that area kicks in. So neuropsychiatry has already established this for last 15, 20 years since the fMRI has come in, that we falsify data from here onwards from the correct data. So there are centers in the brain which falsifying it, and it's under the influence of the other centers of the area which sends the signal to falsify. So the prefrontal cortex knows about it, but under the influence of the subconscious mind and other areas of the brain, it starts to kicks in to falsify it, and it clouds it completely. And there are centers which are called reward phenomena or the correct phenomena in the orbitofrontal cortex and dorsolateral prefrontal cortex area. So that also kicks in when you are doing the correct pathway. So all these are located in here, and pretty much the fMRI studies are showing in the addiction areas, if you review that shows up that. So I can try to pull up those articles, but my addiction is not my specialty. Geriatric is my specialty, but I have done on those portions when I was doing research in UT Southwestern to look on those things. So we were able to find and study on those issues of the prefrontal cortex where it gets clouded by the subconscious mind to push to falsify it. Does it answer your question?
Yes, partly. I guess you're on the opposite spectrum of the age with geriatric psychiatry. I guess my question was more targeted at child psychiatry. I just wanted to know whether even children are born with this innate ability, the ilham, something that God has given us instinctively to recognize good from bad. At its core, it's sort of not in a detailed way, but just an overarching compass that would give you the ability to say, yes, this action is at its core wrong versus right. And then you can, with time and with knowledge and with hikmah, later on refine this throughout your life, as you very well mentioned. So that was something that I had in mind to see if that was innate in our ability to recognize it.
Let me, Rehan, answer that question. So the Quran mentioned about it, your ruh is completely pure. You have ruh in your body, correct? Which is made from nur, okay? So your ruh is purely pure when you were in the, when your ruh was created, alam arwa, where the ruh was created, and then you put to sleep. And then you come back again, your ruh is put into the human body, and you're here as a transition of life on earth. And then your ruh will be taken away again. By the way, in sleep, the ruh also goes a little bit, and while at death, complete ruh takes away from you. And then the third time. So ruh is completely purified at the time of birth. That's mentioned in Quran. The child does not know because it's just like when you were in your mother's belly, when you were before you're born, you will not remember that you were in mother's belly, what happened, correct? There's a lot of information, you were there but you won't remember it. And that's the concept. What happened in alam arwa, you won't remember it, but you, in fact, there's a mention in Quran that won't you acknowledge that I'm God? And all the ruh said, yes, you are the God, and then you were put to sleep. So your ruh is very purified, and as you're growing up in life, you are trying to establish the life pattern of it. So it does not, it's in early stages, does not know how to do it, but you are pre-clean cut, and as you grow up, you know what is good and bad. But as the time develop, you learn bad habits and all those things, and nurturing all those things. So it does influence you, and then you go into the wrong track. So you're born clean, as Islam says, and as even in psychiatry and psychology, you're born clean when you're born. You're very innocent, cute baby. Everybody is. But then later on in life, we learn all those things and pleasure and all those things, and we go on the wrong track. And then there you go. So that's what psychiatry teaches us, that, influenced by a subconscious mind that influence you so much that your conscious mind get clouded and lose the ability of thinking correctly. And that is where you are higher than an angel, because angels follow what the guidance is. But Allah gave you the wisdom, which is not in angel. That's differentiated. That was mentioned in Quran, that the angels were asking who you're creating. These are the people made, destroy, and do all those things. Allah said, no, you don't know what I know, because Allah has the highest wisdom, and Allah has planning. So we as a kid don't know at the time, but we are too innocent at the time, but we are pretty much clean. And as we grow up, we learn bad habits, and it influences us. Does it helps you to answer your question?
Yes, Jazakallah khair, Najeeb, that was an excellent answer. So I'll be respectful of time. I know we're past the top of the hour, so I don't know what your time limits usually are. I will leave my questions for inshallah the next session, whenever we talk.
Rehan, I really appreciate joining us from Houston, and hopefully your daughter is with us, so she can. And by the way, it's all recorded, so you can also listen down the line whenever you have time.
Brother Najeeb, Brother Najeeb,
yes.
I just shared regarding Rehan question. I just shared a link. And I do remember there was an article published in Time magazine where they were reporting a study where they'll get very young kids. I think they were less than 2 years old. And they will give them unfair allocation of toys. And when that happens, the kids they will have one kid watching, and then they have the two other kids. And if they give the same number of toys, that kid who's watching, his reaction is normal. And then when they give unfair allocation of toys, that kid would look at the person that's giving unfair number of toys, for a longer period of time. And they were discussing how kids have an innate sense of justice. Similar to this is the link that I sent from Scientific American, which kind of discussed similar studies like that. So I think there's a lot of research that talks about the innate sense of, fairness, justice and things like that, which I think that's what Brother Rehan was talking about, that this is given from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're born with it. So I just shared the link of Scientific American, but I kind of did a quick search, but there is more. And I remember there was a really interesting article in Time magazine about that, because many times we think that kids are selfish and like that. That probably comes with time and, but like you said, the fitra, the pure fitra is just very pure, over time, depending on environment and things like that, it can get corrupted, but they're born with an innate, sense of justice, fairness. So the fitra is pure, like what we learn from the Quran.
Correct. So the concept of nature and nurture, so nurture does influence a lot, but the nature has provided you to the right pathway, and let it go, and you will redevelop as you growing the pathway. So nature has a lot of influence, but the nature has given you all the basic ingredient to move forward in a right direction. But unfortunately, the nurture makes a huge difference, and we take the wrong pathway, and that needs to be recognized that when you are in a bad company or things like that, it does influence your nature to go in that direction. We all have different genes. Some people easily go, some people try to protect themselves. So we use Allah's guidance and Allah's mercy to be away from that going in the wrong pathway and strive for going in the right pathway, what Luqman Hakim did and all the other great Muslim did, to be on the right pathway. So please send me that, and I can share with other people too, those slides and articles.
Yes, Cal sent it in the chat box. So if you go to the chat box and you can click on that article. And if Cal, you can look for us on the Time magazine or other related, articles, that'll be good as well. But if anybody wants to see the article that Cal was mentioning, it's in the chat box. So open the chat box and double click on that link.
Good, great.
Oh, this is very pertinent. Jazakallah khair for reminding us of that study, and actually several studies. I think there are YouTube videos also, recording sessions in infant labs regarding that toy study, where the reactions were there, that I do remember watching with my daughter while she was doing her behavioral studies for children. So that indeed is very pertinent. Jazakallah khair. That's excellent.
Right, I agree with you.
We can continue this discussion since, intelligence and emotions or emotional also intelligence will continue to be our subject of next week. Brother Rehan, we're glad that you joined us, and I hope you join us in future meetings as well. We know everybody's busy, but it's good to, to share knowledge and learn. And alhamdulillah, this group we have expertise like Brother Najeeb and other brothers and sisters, and alhamdulillah, it helps us, remind ourselves of the focus of being better people, inshallah. Inshallah.
Ameen.
Jazakumullah khair, and we can continue with our discussion and questions, inshallah, next week. Sister Huda Saeed will join us as well, and she will talk to us. We will arrange with her, because I think she's going to be available next week to talk about emotional intelligence, but also we can continue a little bit if we have more questions for our brother Najeeb, inshallah.
Yeah, that will be great. She will be joining from Cairo, correct? She's a psychology. So that will be a great, her point, and her father, I really admire him for his effort of pushing me into this, because I was nowhere here. Because of him, I joined it. And he said, Najeeb, you need to join us and help us. And I really admire his enthusiasm to push me into it. And then I realized I didn't thought that way till he pushed me that, hey, and he used to talk about hadith, and I used to stop him. That, hey, I need to tell you what neuropsychiatry tells me. And he looks at me and say, you need to start talking. And I said, okay, if you want, I can. I can put whatever 2 cents I have to let you know. And then it became my hobby, like to read and correct. And it's actually correcting me. And in the meantime, I'm trying to correct other people that, hey, neuroscience is all what 1400 years ago. So try to understand, it's the concept of Islam is so great. Just if you once your iman get higher, once you understand the neuroscience and Islam together, it's so great. It's become my hobby nowadays to spend time. Of course, I get busy with all other things going on, but that's fun part for me to help other people and help myself and my family to understand this.
Inshallah, Jazakumullah khair. I know
So
you
if
put effort for us, so we all appreciate you, Brother Najeeb. And, alhamdulillah, Allah is giving us you as a resource and making joyful for you as well. So, alhamdulillah, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his blessings. And for having such a wonderful group, alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan. Inshallah, we will meet next Sunday at 8, inshallah.
Sure. Thank you very much for your time and effort of coming, and I appreciate it. And we will join next week. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Inshallah. As-salam.